Welcome to the day after the election hangover edition.
This is Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman.
I need to give full disclosure up front on the program. As many of you know, I need to record these programs in advance. There's just no other way to do it because the program needs to be distributed to a couple of radio stations, and they have to be there literally on time or they're not going to be on the air at all. And so we're going to be cutting it close today in a couple of places. You can imagine as I'm sitting here recording this program, probably anywhere between 2 and 4 hours from when you finally will hear it, a lot has happened in the last 24 hours since we were on Election Day and the polls started to close and the numbers started to come in. And I've been watching social media. I've been talking to good friends of mine that I thoroughly trust and just trying to get a feel for what has happened. Now, some of the results were not surprising at all. I mean, I felt confident about our primary state, our home state of Florida, and it did slightly better than I expected in terms of support for Donald Trump. Georgia, I'm a little puzzled why it's taking so long to call. Maybe by the time you hear this program, it may already have been called. And I suspect that it'll be for Donald Trump. I also believe that North Carolina, in spite of having a Democrat governor, he's fairly popular. Trump still may win like he did 4 years ago when the same governor was on the ticket and won. So it is very possible, knowing how North Carolina is. You got in the western part of North Carolina, you've got one county in all of western North Carolina that is blue, and that is Buncombe County, where Asheville is, and predominantly the city of Asheville is the Democrat stronghold. And the rest of the counties out there, they're not. They're very conservative. They're very genteel, for lack of a better term. Then you got Charlotte, you got the Research Triangle, and a couple of places, near the coast. But for the most part, North Carolina is, what it is. What it is. It's still a deep South state in many ways, outside of a few cities. South Carolina was no surprise. As I look around the country, I don't see a whole lot of surprises except for one thing. Why in states like Pennsylvania, why in states like Michigan, why in states like Wisconsin did they literally say, we're not going to count any more votes, we're going home tonight? That to me is ripe for fraud, number one, especially when you send the poll watchers and everybody home in the Philadelphia area. So I am concerned about some of the things that I'm seeing. Is the election trying to be stolen? I'm not going to make that claim. I'm not going to go quite that far. Do I think it is possible? Absolutely. Do I believe there's voter fraud? Though one party would like to deny it and claim it never happens, you bet it does. People are in jail for voter fraud. But I think we're only scratching or seeing the tip of the iceberg. I think it's a lot deeper than we would want to believe. Now, there are all kind of reasons why it's taking longer to get certain votes counted in certain states. Now, Florida, with a population bigger than New York, far bigger than Michigan, far bigger than, some of these states that are taking their sweet time, had the results in a pretty good amount, in a fair amount of time, and it was called. And it's obvious that the mathematics were there, where basically Joe Biden could not win. And the math was there. And of course, we have 2 time zones in the state of Florida, the Panhandle being in Central Time and the rest of the state in Eastern. So we have to wait later to even see our results. But see, in Florida, with a absentee ballot, when you mail it in, and we tracked ours, they indicate that your ballot was received and it's been processed and it's been counted. In other words, we followed the instructions and now they've already counted that ballot electronically. Now, no one knows the answer or what the total is until Election Day. But even as the ballots come in, they are put through the machine and processed. That's simple. So there's no waiting to have to do all those mailed-in ballots on election night and process them. They were done as they arrived in Florida, so it was a lot quicker. But some states like Pennsylvania decided, no, we're going to count them all on Election Day. We'd like to have an extra 9 days in case some ballots got lost in the mail, you understand? And, well, if it doesn't have a postmark, maybe we should consider it. See, you see where the fraud can come in. I look at this nation, and I look at the numbers, and it is very troubling when you look at the number of people that vote for the pro-abortion candidate, the pro-I want to raise taxes candidate. Either people are deceived about what they are saying or don't want to believe or have been told, well, they're believing lies. I just can't believe that people, well, maybe I can. Maybe it's because our nation has come under God's judgment because of our abortion, because of the way we treat God in our society. Our education system has had a good 25 to 30 years of ruining our children. And you've heard me say this before in this program. I have an extreme disdain for what I call the education lobby. They are one of the most destructive things that we have in our country, in our world today. So many of the younger voters of today, well, they're not looking at the world the way that I would, the way that you probably would if you're a regular listener to this program. We have parents from my generation that failed to take their children to church and raise them in the fear and admonition of the Lord. And now their children, my grandchildren's kind of generation, are continuing the same pattern. So it doesn't surprise me when you have children that have no comprehension of common sense. Everything is based upon how I feel today, and this is a problem as I see it, and I don't see it getting a whole lot better anytime soon. So the election, as of the time that I am recording this, it's still up in the air. May North Carolina and perhaps Georgia finish up by the time you're hearing this program? There's a chance. Will Nevada be called? Probably not until Thursday. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. In many of the talks that I had with people before the election, and they were saying, well, what do you think the outcome's going to be? Do you think that, Trump can pull it off? Do you think Biden's going to win? And what pathway would he get? And my answer is always, do not believe the polls. Do not believe the polls. And I think one guy said it clearly. I'm trying to remember his name now. Last name is Luntz. He does great polling. But he said, if we get it wrong again on this election, the polling industry is ruined. I mean, it should go out of business. And truthfully, if at the end of the day and the legitimate votes are counted and Trump wins, I don't think anybody should ever put a poll on radio or television again. Even the Fox News polls have been wrong. In many of the states where Donald Trump has won, they were wrong. We'll figure it out later when it comes to Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. We'll figure it out later. But in so many other areas, state by state, many of them have been wrong. Surprising? No. I mean, Ohio, they could count their votes. Florida, they had it wrong there. In 2016, they had it wrong even worse this year. So I think the polling industry is something that we don't need anymore because apparently with the way people live and our smartphones and not answering certain calls, just like before I sat down to record this radio program, my cell phone goes off with a phone call from somewhere in Florida in a 305 area code, and I answer it. Normally I don't. And there's nobody there, and I'm going, hello, hello, hello. And there's still that pause, waiting for the mechanical dialer has done its job, and the guy didn't get there fast enough, so I hung up. Now, at my age, I'm getting calls for Medicare supplements. I'm getting calls for extended warranties on my car. And believe it or not, I'm getting calls on consolidating and getting rid of my student debt, which I don't have. I've been getting those calls for 4 years. I am 66 years old. I paid my way through school as I went. I had no debt when I finished. So that's 40 some odd years ago. So where are we today as a nation? I'm very concerned that even if Donald Trump pulls it out today, if the Senate is kept, and it appears more likely that that is probably true, at least at the time that I'm recording this program to be aired later this afternoon and into the evening here on the day after election, it appears that, we will keep, the Senate will be kept by Republicans. The House will probably, from what I'm seeing right now, last that I checked, will still stay in the hands of Democrats, though it is also possible they may lose a few seats. So what could happen? You'll have a Republican Senate, a slightly diminished House, and if Joe Biden becomes the president, by the middle of next year, when Kamala Harris is actually the president, I firmly believe that something that Nancy Pelosi said not that many months ago, as she tried to put some mechanisms and committees and rules in place on dealing with the 25th Amendment, and she kind of indicated it's not for the current president, it's going to be for some future president. Well, the 25th Amendment deals with the president being mentally or physically able to do his job. So that may be what they're thinking, that let him be president for a while, and after the honeymoon period is over and there's issues and troubles, then he can be removed. And then Kamala Harris becomes president, somebody who could never on her own accord become the president of the United States in any kind of an election. The Democrats didn't even like her. She had to drop out of the race early. She was one of the most unpopular of all the Democrat candidates. And yet she is probably the most leftist of any United States senator today. I think those that are trying to take over our world, that want the one world system, they're happy to have Joe Biden in there because he's going to be harmless, and then they'll get rid of him. And then Kamala Harris becomes president. They really were hoping. I really believe this, and I tell you, I'm not really into conspiracy theories. I just kind of look at the logic as it plays out before me. I really believe deep down inside that those on the extreme left ran Joe Biden as a placeholder to get the presidency with a so-called moderate Democrat, because nobody else running except Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii, nobody else would be deemed a moderate. They were all left-wing to the extreme. Beto O'Rourke, I'm going to come get your guns. Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren. They all try to be nice, and I'm just like one of you, but they are so deep into what I call the swamp of D.C. that they can't be trusted. They are so into their power. They're so into being one of the elites, one of the chosen, so to speak, in D.C. And so the only way to get the most leftist person possible into the presidency was to have a placeholder in Joe Biden, who they knew if they could just keep him propped up through this election. And it all changed on a dime in South Carolina. People that saw him and knew him weren't supporting him until he got a little boost in South Carolina. And then suddenly the word got out, clear the path for Biden. And the pathway got cleared pretty quickly. And before you know it, he was the nominee. And from being the nominee, then he chose Kamala Harris, the most left of the party in the United States Senate. And like I said, who never could be elected on her own, period. There is no way she would win states like Florida. No way she would win states like Ohio or Michigan or Wisconsin. She'd be deemed too far, way too over the edge. But there she is, on the ticket. Many a time she said the Harris-Biden administration, oops, she means the Biden-Harris. But I think sometimes the truth comes out because she knows that if they win, just be patient, give it a little bit of time, and either between the 25th Amendment or the things the Democrats try to deny about some of these shenanigans that he was involved with, and I can give you that scenario. If the 25th Amendment doesn't get Joe Biden, if he gets elected, well, suddenly these revelations about the business dealings with China and other places and making all this illegal money and a money laundering scheme will come to light. And even the Democrats will say, Joe, you got to go. And you need to resign the presidency of the United States. And in exchange for that, you'll have a nice pension and a full pardon. And you can go home to Delaware and enjoy the rest of your life in peace and with all your money. I see those two scenarios being the only thing that could happen in the first year or way less of a Joe Biden, Kamala Harris presidency. And I'm not sure if you agree with that or not, but I don't see him making it the first year. I don't think he'll make it to the summer if he gets elected. I think that all this stuff that the media's tried to bury like a cat in the litter box. I mean, Twitter, anytime you post something about it, they try to take it down. Facebook calls it fake news. They've done everything in their power to keep that story off the front pages of newspapers, away from social media, because it is damaging, very damaging. And they know it's probably true. And they know they can also use it when the time comes to say goodbye to Joe and hello to Kamala Harris. Now, like I say, I'm not sure if you buy what I'm saying, but I'm pretty well convinced that everything that I've seen, everything out there that I look at, I lean in that direction. So here we are today, at least at the time that I am before this very microphone, recording this very program for you on this very day in November. Here it is, the 4th of November, and I'm recording it on the 4th. Normally I try to be a day or two ahead because of, the constraints of the way this program has to be done. And I knew there's no way to record it on Election Day and have any information. I could guess and that we'd have trouble. I mean, I knew we were going to have some kind of troubles. I just was wondering where. And I wasn't disappointed that it would be in the Rust Belt in that area of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. There was no doubt in my mind that was going to be where the battle continues. A friend of mine and I were talking just before I came on to do this program. He said, even if the Democrats know that they can't win, or there's no way that they can legitimately get away with trying to, shall we say, stuff the ballot box, even if they know those things, would they gracefully step down and step back and say, we concede? If they're not going to do it. Hillary Clinton made it very, very clear. Under no circumstances do you concede, Joe. You don't concede. Under no circumstances. You never concede. We could see several things happen. And these are the scenarios as best as I understand them and have read and have learned and have double-checked and triple-checked. You could have the outside possibility of no declared winner. And if that happens, we'll be going right past the date in December that the Electoral College was supposed to meet and choose. And then it gets tossed to the House of Representatives. Now, even though the Democrats have a majority of individual members, they do not have a majority of state delegations. Now, let me explain that. In a state like, for example, California, the majority of the congressmen are Democrats. And so when this big bunch of Democrats and a few Republicans get together and they vote as a state delegation, they, of course, will make their one vote for Joe Biden. But it's just one vote for the state of California. When they come to Florida, there are more Republican congressmen in Florida than Democrats, so guess what? The one vote for Florida, it will go to Donald Trump. And the same in Ohio and other states. New York has more Democrats than Republicans, but it's one vote. And at the end of the day, you'll have like 27 to 30. I can't remember what the number is. Just depends on how we finish out the last few races in the House. But regardless, you'll have over 25. You need 26 of the delegations. You'll have at least 29, maybe more. So Donald Trump would win that way. Is there a pathway for Joe Biden? Possibly. But I watch how the numbers are going up in some of those states and how somebody can get 138,000 votes between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. and not one for Donald Trump is, can I say suspicious without getting you into a conspiracy theory thought? One very distinct possibility, and I've had to think this one through quite a bit. One thing that is on my mind is maybe they know they're going to lose, but they're not going to go down without punishing the country first. How do you think this nation would be if this is going on a week from now, or after Thanksgiving, or into December? And all you're hearing about is an unsettled election and coronavirus cases. Unsettled election and coronavirus cases. That'll be all that'll be in the news. Depressing people for the future to look for government to save them. And that's part of the plan, my friends. A big part of the plan. I'm going to try to get my friend Dr. Timothy Gales in the program in a day or so. And what we want to talk about, probably we'll do it maybe Monday. By then we'll know more. We'll have a good idea if this is going to linger on for weeks. I don't think North Carolina and Georgia will linger on. It could already be settled by the time you're hearing this. Those two states could very likely be decided today. But then again, maybe not. But I'm thinking, yes. Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin are the ones that are going to be, well, they're going to be sitting out there for a while. And even Nevada has said if it comes down to it being, you'll have one pathway where if a state like Michigan or Wisconsin goes to Joe Biden, that suddenly Nevada is back in play. And they're saying with their handful of Electoral College votes, it's going to be at least tomorrow. So you think about it. You think about what you're hearing out there and seeing, and I'm going to share a few of the thoughts in a couple of minutes, but that's my initial take here on this election day, and I'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to the second half of the program. And the implications either way. As I said on the program yesterday and on Monday, over the weekend, and a couple of times last week, if you're putting your faith into people, princes or mortals, You'll be disappointed regardless. You will be disappointed. How many times have I said in the last several weeks, we fear a virus more than we fear God? We worry more about politics than we worry about sharing the good news of Jesus Christ, because somehow we have made politics a god. Then I look at the number of people and how they voted. And even if Donald Trump were to win, he's still going to be a little shy on the plurality of the vote. In other words, the total number he's going to be, shy like he was in 2016. And so what? What it does tell me is that in this country right now, for people to vote as they do, and I know some people, either they are very deceived, they don't understand, they don't pay attention, they don't like Donald Trump, and so they'll just vote for the other guy, not knowing what comes with, what strings are attached with the other guy. They don't get it. We have a lot of voters out there that are just so naive. And I've noticed, maybe you have too, we have people that we used to know on Facebook, and I just had to let them go. They decided they hate Trump so bad, they pass along fake stuff that's not even true. And when you point it out, they say, so what? I just don't want him in office, so I'll leave it up there anyway. They don't care if it's a lie. How many consciences have been that seared over politics? And I've got a policy now. I don't argue anymore with anybody about politics. I'm done. I don't have time to argue with people on Facebook about politics. If you want to comment and be acidic about it, I don't need you, I don't need you disturbing me on Facebook. And you may say, well, Bob, how are you going to help someone, grow or learn? And I'm always reminded of something in Scripture. And sometimes this is one of the hardest things that we do. Do you remember when Jesus sent out his disciples 2 by 2? And there's a debate. Is it 35 pairs or 36 pairs? Well, let's say 7. It was like 70 or 72 of them went out. 2 by 2. And Jesus said, wherever you go to give this message, if you feel the Spirit descend upon you and this is the place to be, you stay. And you stay as long as you need to. If the Spirit is telling you to move on and don't waste your time, he says, kick the dust off your shoes and go. And sometimes in ministry, one of the hardest things that we do, and I know this from my own church experience, is kicking the dust off your shoes when you just don't feel that peace of the Lord in dealing with certain people. I had a good friend of mine many, many years ago. He was a Baptist preacher in Englewood, Florida. He's long since passed away now, but I like the guy. Really neat individual. And I did some work for them because they happened to be they were part owners of a radio station ministry in that part of the world. And the call letters if anybody listens in that part of the world are WSEB. And they're in Englewood, 91.3 if I'm not mistaken. And I did some of their engineering work part-time because, they couldn't really afford a full-time guy. And I did some work for them. And they were just nice people. And one time, I went down to visit, and I just, you could see it in my face, I guess, that I was kind of wearing some troubles from my own congregation, my own little church up in Sarasota. And I'm having some difficulty with just a handful of people. And I'm trying to work with those people. I'm trying to make peace. I'm trying to make things work better. I'm doing everything that I know to do, and I'm just not getting anywhere. And we sat there. He said, let's go out to lunch and talk about it. So he and I went out, and he said, listen, he said, I know you're old enough and smart enough, but if you haven't been in ministry that many years, which was true, I was ordained into ministry in my 40s, and I'm now like 46, 47. I'm trying to think. Maybe 48 years old, 47, 48. Only been doing church work for a handful of years. And I'm trying to be everybody's friend. You understand that concept? I'm trying to be everything to everybody and keep the peace. And he said, there comes a time, Bob, he said, that when you're dealing with churches, you got to remember this adage: only God can add by subtraction. If you didn't catch what I just said, I'll say it again. Only God can add by subtraction. He said sometimes you end up putting all your effort and energy into people that will fight you every step of the way and never give in to the authority you have in the gospel as a pastor. And they'll always be a troublemaker. And they will always be a source of grief in your congregation. And those are, just like he said with the disciples, they're the ones you got to kick the dust off your shoes and move on. Because you're wasting your time, the time that I could be spending with other people that need to be in that church, other people in that church that have needs that I'm not aware of because I'm too busy focusing on the troublemakers. Only God can add by subtraction. And I'm kind of doing that with some of the people that I've known on Facebook, and I'm beginning to realize, as one guy once told me years ago, it's kind of like wrestling a pig in the mud. The pig loves it. So why bother? Because you're never going to win. Our mailing address, if you're listening to Truth to Ponder. Man, I went on for a long time. I'm looking at the clock. What was I thinking? Mailing address, just to have it. We're up here in Georgia right now, and I want to thank some people. We got a bunch of letters in the last several days. And I've got a lot of stuff I need to go through, and I'll share some things that people have said. People listening on shortwaves, people listening as a podcast, both. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the next half hour. Our address up here is, you can write on the envelope, Truth to Ponder. My name is Bob Bierman, and the spelling is Biermann. It's the German spelling. And Bob Bierman, and I'm at 21 Berkshire Lane, number 263. And that's number 263 is the little mailbox that they use here in this tiny little mountain community. And we're in Sky Valley, Georgia, zip code 30537. That's Bob Bierman or Truth to Ponder. 21 Berkshire Lane, number 263. Sky Valley, Georgia, 30537. And we shall return.
This is Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman.
Robert E. Lee on repentance. Shalom Aleichem. This is the nice Jewish boy, Jonathan Kahn, your Jewish connection, bringing you the riches of your Jewish roots in Jesus. Now get your pen out as fast as you can so you don't miss out on receiving a special free gift you're going to get and love in a moment. Now, it was the turning point of the Civil War, the high water mark of the Southern Confederacy, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, Pickett's charge. Upon General Lee's order, General Longstreet ordered General Pickett to charge across a large open field of grain as Union soldiers rained down upon them bullets and cannon fire. It was perhaps the greatest disaster of the war. Thousands of men were killed or wounded. The Confederate Army left Gettysburg shattered. But as the gray uniformed soldiers walked down the road in retreat, they met General Robert E. Lee sitting on his horse saying, "It's all my fault, boys. It's all my fault." Now, it's a poignant moment in American history, but also a display of something special, because greatness is not found in always being right, but rather when you've made a mistake, being able to confess it and repent of it. Robert E. Lee, "It's all my fault," was a display of a kind of greatness. So it is with God's saints. God's saints aren't those who never make mistakes, but they're those who, when they make a mistake, they confess it and they repent of it. You see, you can't grow if you don't repent. And you can't repent if you can't confess your sin. You can't confess your sin without taking responsibility for your actions. So you want your life to change? You can't change anyone but yourself. And you can't change yourself until you can say, "It was all my fault. I was wrong." Saying it was my fault and I was wrong is the beginning of taking responsibility for your life before God. And then God can really do a great thing. It's the beginning of repentance and change, the beginning of growth and blessing. So learn from Robert E. Lee. Greatness in God begins with the words, "I was wrong." Want more? Ask for the power of being wrong. Now, would you like to be faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings? How about just move mountains? You can. Sapphire is the super spiritual supplement to turn your walk into a super life with God. Plus the incredible Mystery of the Temple Doors. You'll love it all free. How do you get this? Easy. Just remember Jesus' real Hebrew name, Yeshua, and dial it. That's all you do. Just dial 1-800-YESHUA-1. It's so easy, but call now. 1-800-YESHUA-1. Now I invite you to join with me in the Great Commission to bring salvation back to the Jewish people and to reach millions of unreached peoples around the world on 5 continents. Just call now. 1-800-YESHUA-1. That's YESHUA-1. Or write me direct. The Nice Jewish Boy at Box 1111, Lodi, New Jersey, 07644. That's a Nice Jewish Boy, 1111, Lodi, Lodi, New Jersey, the zip 07644. Till next time, this is Jonathan Kahn saying Shalom Aleichem. Peace be to you, my friend, in Messiah, Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace.
This is Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman.
And welcome back to the day after election edition of the program, Truth to Ponder. I'm your host, Bob Bierman. Did you stay up late last night? My wife and I did. I promised myself I wouldn't, but I did it anyway. And then it was hard to get up this morning. But nothing had really changed. I mean, everything was kind of where it was when we left off last night. But you know, I'm not going to worry about the results. I'm not going to worry about any of it because, well, I just don't put my trust in people and politics. I put my trust in my God, my Lord, and my Savior. And that's the most important thing that we can do. I think about the world that we live in and the change and talking to people I know overseas that have total misconceptions and misinformation about what goes on here in our country, the United States, and how far, if you want to be really brutally honest, we've fallen. We've been talking about of course, the election that occurred yesterday. And during the break, I took a little time to run out there and check the news. Now, as I told you at the beginning of the program, I have to record this program a couple of hours in advance. Otherwise, there's no way to get the program distributed to the radio stations that need to air it. And I can already tell you, as late as I'm recording this now, well, we're cutting it close. Let's just put it that way. We'll make it, I'm sure, and keep me in your prayers. Before I get back to what I was talking about, I just wanted to share just a couple of things. I want to thank a number of people in just these recent days that have sent me a letter to tell me that they're listening to the program Truth to Ponder. It means more to me than you'll ever know when you get a hold of me. Now, you can do it by regular mail or even email, whichever is more convenient, whichever you prefer to do. And I do want to say, for some of those people out there that have sent me some material to look at, to do some research on, yes, I will do that probably sometime in the next week or so. And a lot of it's going to really depend on how we're going to work out this entire election mess. I've been reading too many stories from people, and when you look at social media, I look at it, and man, I'm telling you, these are tech tyrants. Facebook is not your friend. If you have a church and you're streaming on Facebook, you better be looking for an alternative. You shouldn't be there. But Bob, we got to be on Facebook. No, you don't. You need to find something else, and I'll find it for you if I have to. Because see, Facebook will take some of the stories that are coming out and people that are witnessing some things that are suspicious. Oh, it's not true. It's just like the entire Hunter Biden thing. Oh, no. That's just Russian meddling and disinformation. Well, trust me. If Biden wins, that's going to come out, or Trump wins, it's still going to come out because they're going to get rid of Joe to put in Kamala Harris. I can see it already in the making, and I hope you can see it too. It's just the reality of where we are in our world today. Our mailing address, if you do want to use that, I'm going to give it to you real quick in case it gets close to the end of the program. And if you just take a moment, if you want to get something to write on, I can hang on here for a second. And like I say, I'm looking at what people are saying, some of the very strange things that are occurring. I mean, how do you get suddenly 138,000 votes come in magically in Michigan, and every one of them 100% are for Joe Biden, and the other ones and there's zero for Donald Trump? They're a little bit. It doesn't seem right. Maybe there's a legitimate excuse, but I'm sorry, it just doesn't seem right. I feel that there are people out there that are determined to change the entire nature of our country here in the United States. Okay, the mailing address, if you want to get a hold of me, I'm Bob Bierman, Bierma, 2 N's. That's Biermann. And the address, and I'll give it again, is 21, and the street is called Berkshire, Berkshire. That's 21 Berkshire Lane. Then add on that same line the number 263. That's 263. Even though we have a street address for shipping, they require we add that 263 because that is the little P.O. box we have to use not far from our house. And that's in the little community of Sky Valley, 2 words, Sky Valley, in the state of Georgia. And the zip code is 30537. That's 30537. I'm pretty confident right now that before this program airs and when you're hearing it, the election will not yet be fully determined. Pennsylvania is talking about how many days? 9 days? You got Nevada saying it's going to be at least tomorrow. Perhaps by the time this show airs or later this evening or into tonight, we'll know about Georgia and North Carolina. And it's going to come down to what I firmly believe from the very beginning, from the very, 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 very beginning, that what it's going to come down to is a firewall in Michigan and Pennsylvania that'll be in there by the Democrat governors of those states. And I was saying before, you have all these people that keep voting for Democrats that are promising to raise your taxes. They're promising to have unfettered abortion. They just think it's a wonderful thing that you can kill your baby all the way up to birth. There's a lot of things that they're pushing, and I can't believe that the American people, a plurality, in other words, more than 50% of the voters think that that's great. Either that, they're very deceived, and they think those issues don't matter, and all they're caring about is more whatever they're going to get for themselves. I don't understand what the mentality is, or they frankly just don't care anymore. The Bible talks about having a conscience that is so seared, you don't care about right and wrong anymore. It goes away. When we think of these last 10, 15, 20 years, the things that have occurred in just 1/3 of my lifetime, that if you'd gone to the first third of my lifetime, and I'm starting out as a young adult married, if you told me the things that we accept today and are mainstreaming in our schools, I would have thought you were crazy. It would be impossible. But as a nation, and I'm not saying we were always perfect and godly and wonderful, and no, we're people, we're human beings, we're sinners by nature. Let's start with that. But there wasn't this antagonistic relationship of government and churches, which you find in many states today. It's antagonistic. The Bible's full of hate speech. Look at it, Canada. You can say you preach the wrong sermon, you're going to be in front of a tribunal. You may be paying a big fine or threatened with jail. It's coming to America, folks. And I've been trying to warn you since we started this program back in August that I really believe the day is coming that unless you're part of what I call the woke and established and government-approved church, Anything you have to say will be censored on Facebook, Twitter. Google will make you disappear. These tech tyrants will make you disappear. Let me say that again. The tech tyrants will make you disappear. That's why I'm telling you, if your church is using Facebook to stream during this coronavirus case-demic, maybe you need to start thinking about, well, maybe you need to seriously start thinking about a different platform, because you're not welcome. You're not going to be welcome on these tech tyrant platforms in the future. Even with this political race, they have tried to bury and erase news and certain stories. Oh, they're not true. Don't believe that. I don't know if I'm witnessing incompetence or potential theft of an election or stuffing a ballot box. I don't know. And until I get a little bit more information in front of me, I'm not going to make that declaration. But I am very suspicious about what's happening in states like Michigan and Wisconsin, and even Pennsylvania. Because, see, right now where the count stands, if Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania go to Joe Biden, he is going to be the president-elect. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And they'll keep him propped up till we get to Inauguration Day in January. And then, somewhere along the way, in that first year, maybe by Easter, maybe by summer, either the Hunter Biden scandal will connect to him, and the Democrats that are behind the scenes will let it happen, and he will then step down, like Richard Nixon did, and take off in Marine One, heading back to Delaware, and Kamala Harris gives him a complete and total pardon for everybody and everything. And he can live out his life and the millions of dollars he made by selling out the public trust. And no matter how I look at it, how does somebody that, if you look at the man's history, and I'm just going to say this puzzles me. Here's a guy that didn't do all that well in college, though he claims that he did, and turns out he really didn't. He lied about his college. He plagiarized in college, got in trouble for that in college, had to drop out of a presidential race many years ago in the 80s because of absolute plagiarism. And he ends up, after he finishes not that great in law school, his first job is elected office where he lives. He has only worked literally in government his entire life. 47 years in Washington, D.C. alone. He was the youngest. I mean, he goes from being some kind of councilman to literally he's a U.S. senator in his 20s, and he's been there ever since. Now, if you're in the U.S. Senate for 47 years, you've accumulated a lot of power. Actually, not quite that many years, because he became the vice president. So let's just say for close to 40 years, you've been in the Senate of the United States. Well, that ought to tell you a lot. He had connections, he had power, he had name recognition. And if you needed something, he probably could get it for you for a price. I mean, the man owns multiple homes that are worth in the millions of dollars each. And even on a senator's salary, I can't envision how somebody can, buy a home, let alone 2 or 3, in those kind of dollars. I mean, how does somebody become a multi-millionaire when there's really no investments involved? There's just some things about it that don't add up. But that's another day. It'll come out. I'm sure that down the road that will come out. Then you have Kamala Harris, who's got a very sketchy political career herself. But she's also the most, I'm not going to use the word liberal anymore. I'm just going to say it's leftist. I'm not going to use the word liberal anymore. I'm going to try to avoid that. And here's why. The word liberal does not have totally negative connotations. If you go back 50 years ago or 70 years ago, being a liberal is not necessarily bad, but being what I call a progressive of the old school and a leftist are pretty much the same thing. They're trying to take us to a central government. They believe in a new world order and all that goes with it. And so we have leftists that have taken over the Democrat Party. And the old-style liberals of the 60s, like Hubert Humphrey, are long gone. Conservative Democrats like Zell Miller of Georgia, long gone. And the list goes on and on and on. We've seen changes. So there are many that are just purely ignorant. They don't watch anything on the news. They just look at social media. And social media had declared early on they were going to influence this election, man. They're going to go for Biden. They said it. And how they get away with all this protection, that they can't be sued, and they can, we're a forum, so you can't sue us. But we're also publishers because we edit what we see that we don't like. And they're trying to get it both ways. And my prayer, if we somehow get through this process, that somehow the Federal Communications Commission begins to relook at what their status is. They're already doing that. And say, you're one or the other. Take a choice. If you're going to be a forum, wonderful. Then you can't delete and edit everybody's stuff and decide what you can see and not see outside of just pornography. Or you can be a publisher and censor all you want, but you can also get sued. So they've been getting this weird protection since the 1990s, and people say, well, how did that happen? It's real easy. Go back to the early days of the Internet. Remember good old dial-up Internet? And there was some what they call bulletin boards. You had a handful of people posting things there. So they wanted to protect these fledgling little businesses that had maybe a few hundred or a couple of thousand users in a state from being bankrupted by some frivolous lawsuit. I don't think anybody ever envisioned something like Google, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I don't think anybody even saw that one coming back in the 1990s. It was a more tame world on the Internet. You know that, and I know that. So here we are in this day after the elections, and as I say, as I record this, we still have the jury out in a bunch of the states. And though I believe that in a short amount of time, in a reasonable time, Georgia and North Carolina will be counted, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin are going to be the firewall. And we're already seeing some strange things happen in Michigan. Strange things happening in Wisconsin. And I don't know what to tell you. I have this very uncomfortable feeling that either there's shenanigans going on, and even if it's statistically impossible and at the end of the day it's drug out, I think it's just those that are supporting Biden, the Democrat Party, they will never gracefully back out at this stage of the game. They just can't do it. They can't stop fighting. They're going to do what Hillary Clinton said. Do not concede. And they'll run this thing all the way up to December if they can, with lawsuits and court cases. I just see a protracted battle ahead. I just don't see. I knew it when we started last night. I've told you, we talked about this on Monday and yesterday's program, that the outcome may not be clear for a while, and I'm seeing that as a strong possibility right now. Like I say, I don't know how this is going to play out. I really don't know. I mean, I can just tell you what I'm seeing, that as I'm sitting here right now, nothing has really changed much of anything. Wisconsin and Michigan now leaning Democrat. Wow, how did that happen? Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia leaning, and Nevada leaning. We just don't know. As everything finally gets, counted out, only time will tell. But you know something? I don't put we've been talking on this program, and we're going to get back to after this election stuff is behind us. And I'm going to promise you on the Friday and weekend edition, I will not talk about presidential politics, just so you understand. I'm not going to do that. I will talk about this today and maybe again tomorrow. But I'm going to try to get away from talking all about the politics and these races, because even if Donald Trump wins, the day's going to come that things are going to change anyway. I mean, that it's inevitable. We are on a collision course with judgment from God. And when you think about the stuff that we've gone through this year with the coronavirus, and we've talked a lot about it this year, and we'll be talking a little bit more about it when I've got some people that I really want to talk with and bring online, because they have a lot of good things to say. They're in the front line. They know I've learned a lot because of my work, and I know people that know even more than I do. But when it comes to what we've seen this year, when you look especially at those that are in the blue states, they were the most hard-handed of anybody, more so than others. They closed your business. They closed your schools. They closed your churches. They closed your beaches. They banned parties. They banned funerals. They banned graduation ceremonies. They banned nursing home visitors. They banned hospital visits. They banned dads in the delivery room. They banned travel to certain states. They even designated what constitutes a meal. They allowed protest. They permitted riots. They allowed anarchists to co-opt cities. Remember Portland? Remember Seattle? They allowed the storming of police precincts. They assaulted peacekeepers. They allowed funerals for people that fit their agenda while shutting all the other ones down. They allowed businesses to be destroyed. They allowed gun stores to be closed, statues to be vandalized. They allowed churches to be set on fire. They allowed infringement upon liberty. And they allowed our Constitution to be completely ignored. Like I say, we talk about these numbers. You're going to say, but Bob, 41,000 have died of it or with it. And are they really deaths by it? Because one of the numbers that I've been looking at is how many people died last year through the month of October versus how many died this year. We are a lot lower than last year and the year before. We're on track to having a lower number of people die in the United States this year, just this year, than the last 3 years. So there are questions that I have about where we're going. This is why we have to be prepared. This is why we need to build our platforms now. If Joe Biden wins, the time is even shorter because it's going to be more difficult. It's going to empower those that are trying to enslave this nation and those that hate the things of God. They've already got the minds and hearts of most of our children through their public educational system, the indoctrination system. And it's only a matter of time. Once again, our mailing address is 21 Berkshire Lane. This is Truth to Ponder. 21 Berkshire Lane, number 263. And you'll find us in the little town of Sky Valley, Georgia, 30537. Once again, 21 Berkshire Lane, number 263, Sky Valley, Georgia, 30537. And our website is truth2ponder.com. Email to me directly is bob@truth2ponder. Truth2ponder.com. We'll pick up this discussion tomorrow. Maybe we'll have a little bit more insight. But regardless, we're going to have to get ourselves prepared for a totally different world.
This has been Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman. To find out more, visit our website, truth2ponder.com. That's truth2ponder.com. Truth to Ponder, shining the light of truth in a darkening world.